How do we get all of our existing developers to embrace and use AI? I have hundreds of software developers that work for me. I've got to train all of them and convince all of them that AI is a good thing and why they should use AI, why they shouldn't be scared of it. As software developers, though, for the last 25 years in my career, I feel like our jobs are just getting harder and harder and harder. More tools, cloud, DevOps, AI, front end, back end, all these different things. And AI is just the next thing that we all have to learn and master. There's so much to do. And at the end of it, product thinking is the one thread through all of it that's really important to productivity and the future. I'm talking today with Senad Santic, who also owns a dev agency and a SaaS company, about this challenge of how do we get our developers going forward to embrace AI, train them, and not be scared of it. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. And we're back for another episode of Product Driven. This is your host, Matt Watson. Very excited to be joined today with Senad Santic, who is the owner of an agency similar to Full Scale, but he's based in Europe. The name of his company is called Zendev, and recently making the pivot to also be the founder of a SaaS company called LinkBound, which is used for social selling. Today, we're going to talk about how AI is impacting our agencies and our business, how we're thinking about training our developers. Also, you know what? How do we diversify to create SaaS companies? At Full Scale, I'm launching Full Scale Ventures. You'll hear more and more about that as time goes on. So, Senad, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's an honor to be here. I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite a few years now, quite honestly, and I've seen that our mindsets are very much in the same direction. So I'm really happy to finally be here and sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love talking to other like-minded individuals and other dev agency owners. And it's an interesting time to own a dev agency, not only because of the economy, but also because of AI, wondering like, hey, how is AI going to affect everything, right? So somebody like the CEO of Anthropic comes by and says, AI is going to write all of the code in 6 months. And then you and I are like, oof, what does that mean for us, right? But I would say so far, my business over the last year has grown. We have more work to do than we've ever had to do. But what is your take?
Yeah, so I think my take, and I don't know if this is because I'm in Europe and you are where you are, but I would say on a global scale, you guys have done amazing if you've been able to grow from the year 2023 up until now, because it was a tougher economy. And it was just kind of like cascading from the layoffs that happened in big tech in the US. We are from the Balkan area of Europe and primarily working towards the Nordic market. And so like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and a little bit towards Germany. And what we could see from our side was that when the big companies in Sweden, which is our primary clientele where they are at, when they were laying off people in Spotify, in H&M, and all of these big companies in Sweden, all of a sudden there was a big talent pool available for hiring. So what used to be that they would come to us out of demand because there were no available engineers like on the market to employ, ended up being that, they find somebody available and it's a great engineer all of a sudden, and then we fall into that last option, so to say. What we've seen from our end, at least in the last 4 or 5 months, is that the markets are picking up again, but primarily, at least for us, where we are seeing that things are going for the better, it's quite honestly on the side of big corporate enterprises. So they're investing more in innovation again and new projects and so on. While on the side of startups, which is a segment where we used to work a lot, I think because venture capital is not as easily available anymore, so that they can't finance as many projects and so on. So we haven't had as much work there. So we're kind of right now trying to double down on where we are seeing the opportunities on the agency side of things. And finally, for us as well, we're started growing heftily again, which I'm really happy about because it was very stagnant for us for probably in the past 2 years.
Well, I think there's two sides of it, right? So in a growing economy, people are going to come to us because they need developers. Developers are hard to find. And then in a downward economy, people come to us because we can also help them save money. So we see it on both ways. And I don't know for your guys' model if you can also help people save money, but for us, we can help people hire developers for like less than half the cost of hiring somebody in the United States. So a lot of people come to us because they're dealing with budget cuts and all this stuff. It's like we still have critical work to do, but we need to figure out a way to do it more affordably. So we're seeing it both ways. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Matt. And I think the United States general are always like quicker on the trigger, so to say, when you compare it to Europe. And Europe, they're a bit more conservative. So we were talking about there, Matt, that should have probably happened earlier in Europe, but they were just kind of like waiting a little bit, see how things are going to play out. But now, and it's already been in the news that a lot of big corporations are now having developers in Latvia, in Romania, and so on. So that trend is happening right now, and we're seeing it. So we are becoming the nearshoring alternative. Luckily for us, we can be with Europe, in the same time zone and so on. So yeah, we're definitely winning a lot there because we are the more affordable alternative for the same quality. And I guess that's what you guys are offering as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, so tell me, how do you think about AI impacting your guys' business? So, internally, do you guys have less developers because you're using AI, or you're like, hey, no, we need more developers because we have to implement AI in these other projects. So we actually need more developers to go add AI to other products.
Yeah. So what I would say is I think I've been kind of like hesitant on employing too many people before I see in which direction things are going to go with AI. What I am seeing is that we are implementing AI not just into our own organization so that we can be more effective. So we are definitely slimming down and seeing every single step of the way, can we make our organization more effective? And because we're also software developers, just like your own company, we also know how to make the most out of it, like set up our own processes so that something that took hours to do before can be done within a few minutes with this new setup and so on in every department. So like in administration, in delivery, and so on and so on. Then there's, of course, the implementation on the client end. So they all have different projects. They want to implement AI into them. And then let's be frank about it. Most of us are just implementing already available LLMs and pinging towards Claude, OpenAI, and so on. But the value that it's creating for those projects is very real. And we see that both on the client side, where we're implementing things, but also our own products that we're building, they're skyrocketing in value because we are able to implement some of the things that we're able to implement with AI. And just this morning, like one of the ideas that we had in our company was that we started about 6 months ago to create this like standardized process of how to deliver MVPs with AI in every part of the like process. So like everything from when a person comes with an idea, how do we help them with AI make that into documentation? How does that design a database for us? How do we design a front-end solution for that? And we were working on that for a few months, and then this morning, a colleague, he showed me something that he had built with. I'm not sure how much you played with it, but it's called Lovable. It's actually
Yeah.
it's a startup out of Sweden, and there's a few of these that are competing for this market right now, and they go very much by the idea. If you go to the Lovable like LinkedIn page, they're like the last software ever built. Now, you and I both know that that's a big claim, and there's a very, very long path to get to that. But at the same time, we had a very specific project that we needed to implement, and what he showed me that he was able to build in 15 minutes, I mean, it was remarkable. Like the whole front end with React and everything, very spot on. Not like just a little bit right, but like 20% wrong. It was like 95% right. So when I see that happening, what I then think about is, well, okay, we're probably unlikely to be able to create our own system that's going to be better than something like Lovable, who is a team of 25 right now, taking in massive investments to, be better and better in that. And what I'm thinking about, is there a new market opening up for building MVPs at a very, very affordable price, right? So then again, it becomes this left shift that we've been talking about earlier here, Matt, before we started, which is that now it's all of a sudden more about understanding the product than the actual implementation of the code, right? So again, that becomes even more important if you're going to use a tool like Lovable or something similar like that. So I think a lot of us are evaluating like what's out there, how far can it take you, what business opportunities can we make out of it? And I'm very much not on the conservative side of things here, because I think that puts you at the risk of time surpassing you, so to say. So we try to stay on top of things, but it's also, and I think you can imagine this as well, it's overwhelming. Like there's so much new things coming out, so many new models that are coming out. Yesterday, Claude could develop to this level. Now all of a sudden it can develop to this level. But yeah, we're trying to stay on top of things.
Well, it's impossible to stay on top of them, right?
Yeah.
And it's like every week, it's like, oh my God, DeepSeek, this thing. And then
Yeah.
like 2 weeks later, it's like Claude releases a new version and it's even better. And it's like, can't keep up with any of it. And I think in the reality of like for our employees and our clients, most of them are in a 1, 2, 3+ year lag behind any of this stuff, right?
Mm.
Like people are so far behind on these things. Even a lot of developers, they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I read about it, but I'm just doing my job every day. Let me know when I have to change my life because I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? And now some of them like want to play with the stuff and they want to play with the cool stuff, but then their boss are like, oh, we don't have time for you to play with that. We need you to get this work done, right? And or their company's like, because of security reasons, you can't use it. Stuff is all over the board, right?
Mm.
And what gets all the headlines what you're describing with Lovable and Replit and all these different tools is building MVPs. Everybody's like, oh my God, I built all this amazing stuff in a day or in 3 days or whatever. But they never really show you the reality of like, well, I have this code base that has 1 million lines of code, and here's what I did with it with Lovable. Like that's not the scenario they show.
Not at all. Yeah. And it's also
But
like,
that's the world that these developers live in.
yes.
These developers live in this world of I have this big messy code base, all this legacy code. I have to be careful not to break anything, and I need to get my project done. But
Yeah.
these tools are all fancy and sexy for building an MVP.
Yeah.
And to your point, may completely change that model. It's like you can build an MVP of almost anything. Like the joke is like, you can build any app in 3 hours and you spend 3 weeks debugging it.
Exactly. It's a good point. So it's almost like you're solving the customer need to see something quick very early on, but it's going to
Rapid
cost you.
prototyping is great.
Yeah, so they're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But then the question is like, in month 4, when you're actually developing on that code base, are you efficient or are you not? And that's going to be depend on these millions of lines of codes because, and you know this as well because you have a software development company. Like engineers hate taking over other engineers' code. It's always like, oh, this hasn't been done properly previously, and it's not necessarily a matter of if it's good code or not. It's just cognitively exhausting.
They don't know what it does. They didn't write it.
What it is.
So
Yeah,
the
they
code
didn't write
sucks.
it. So they haven't. So now, but AI is the same thing. You didn't write it. So like,
Yeah.
you're always going into somebody else's code. So at some point, there's a point of diminishing return. So you get a lot early on, but then down the line, when you get those deep problems, you don't have an overview of all of that code that has been written. So I think it looks good early on, and not to mention like it's a matter of quickly building MVPs, which means that there's a business model to be made there. But most of the serious work that we're doing towards the big companies that we're doing, it's not even a matter of like, are you using AI or not? It's like, we use their old code base, which is still on like jQuery and stuff like that. So you don't really have that luxury of talking about
And
where
things are years behind in the real world.
exactly. And it's not weird. It's not their fault. They've been building on these systems for years and years and years. And what does that imply for them? That now all of a sudden there's some AI that's available and so on. So, but I think it's an interesting time, and I think. And I think we need to divide those things, right? So if we are talking about purely building quick MVPs to test concept, but maybe there's an acceptance that this is what you would call like throwaway code. Maybe it's a quick way to test some concepts, just get to the proof of concept stage. And then eventually I see most of these things being rewritten, but again, using AI in different ways, like you would use like the cursor IDE to write the code faster and so on, but not these like Lovable where they write the entire application for you. I think that's not sustainable in the long run. At least that's how I feel right now, but we'll see down the line.
It's amazing for rapidly prototyping any kind of UI. Even if you have an existing system, being able to go to Lovable and like, okay, I need to build a new dashboard that would look like this. And it's sort of your UX designer,
Yeah.
right? And potentially it even gives you all of the code and React or whatever you want to use.
Mhm.
They potentially go back to the developers like, hey, I built a prototype of this whole thing in React. It took me an afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, how do we actually get this thing live in the system?
Right.
Now, maybe that still takes a week or two or whatever.
Yeah.
But that sort of rapid prototyping is super, super valuable because honestly, I feel like that's one of the things a lot of developers struggle with the most is the like blank screen. You're like, hey, go build a new dashboard. And I'd be like, where do I start? Right? Where if you can go into these tools and it can help you like prototype and build that stuff from scratch and you can iterate it and now you can have more product people doing that, right? So they can hand it back to the developers. It's like you've really kind of changed the UX design part of it to me is a big change.
First, that implies an entire change in the flow. So the way that we usually do it in our company, if it is project based and it comes to us, what usually ends up happening is we sit down with them, we try to define the requirement specification and the user stories and so on. And then we go into, this is all a part of what we call the discovery. And a part of that discovery is that text gets sent off to our Figma designers who do a UI UX design of it. We validate on that level, is this what we want to build? Are we sure that this is what we want to build? We call that our single source of truth and so on. But now all of a sudden when this is available, I might not even want to go through that process, because if I lock myself into what the Figma designed and the AI does something different, oh, now I have to redesign it in accordance with that Figma. So I almost want to skip the Figma part, and all of a sudden, I have an application which is quite honestly 85-90% of the time the right thing that you would want to do. And when it's not, it's very easy to prompt it back again to make it the right thing. So it's going to change the processes as well. I think you're very right in the sense that, at least for the first version, which is what most MVPs are, you don't need anything more fancy than what Lovable comes up with.
Well, I think the reality is, over my 25-year career of being a software developer has really gotten harder every year. Honestly. And now it's even harder. Now you're like, hey, you're a software developer, but now you have to use AI. You got to write code like 4 times faster, and the code's still all got to be perfect. And you're going to have to make all these product decisions around what the product needs to do, because we don't have time to have stand-up meetings every 2 hours to get updates from you because you're supposed to be moving that fast. Like that's what the world feels like we're moving towards.
Sure.
Well, back when I started my career, we didn't have product managers and project managers and QA, and there was no cloud. There was no Git. Like all these different things that people use today, none of this stuff existed. I just talked to some guy. He'd tell me what he'd want. I'd go bang it out in Visual Basic 6 and give it to him the next day.
Yeah, ironically, I agree 100% with you. So I started studying software engineering in 2007. And back then, the baseline of what we were studying was still not web development. We did Java programming, but then I took up web development on the side. So I learned how to build things in PHP with a little bit of JavaScript and jQuery on the side. And I felt like that was all I needed, right? So I could build 95% of the things that I wanted through this web system with jQuery and PHP. And I would have a LAMP stack, install it on a server, and it would work beautifully. And then all of a sudden, 2012, 13, 14, I start feeling overwhelmed. It's 3 new frameworks I have to choose. Am I going to learn Angular, React, Vue.js? Yeah. All of a sudden, there's something called Ember. Now I have to learn Git for I used to do FTP before that. So I'm not saying that that's scalable, but I used to do
all this DevOps stuff. Got to learn all this cloud
the DevOps
stuff.
The cloud. I knew how to work on a server. Yeah. I just learned how to operate LAMP stack. I knew most things, but then all of a sudden that's not good. Now I have to put it on Azure, rather AWS for me at that point, and it's 10 times more expensive than I was already paying. So I don't understand why I'm doing all these things. So yeah, the overhead just keeps getting stacked up and stacked up.
Now add AI to it. And the expectations.
Yeah, but with the exception of AI, if you look at all the stack before that, now it finally seems like it's going towards a more simplified variant as well. So React all of a sudden is talking about, forget React, do Next, so it's server-side rendered. I'm I recognize all of these things from PHP. It's almost coming full circle to what it was early on. It just went too complex for a few years.
But so the problem is, how do we teach our developers this?
Yeah.
Right. So how are you guys, thinking about training your existing developers? You have dozens of developers that work for you, right? How are you hey, how do I train them to use all these AI tools, know when to use these AI tools, have more kind of product thinking, because we kind of see that the job role evolving. How do you train them?
Yeah. So as far as product thinking, I went very much early on into that direction. I mean, my background is I studied software engineering for 3 years, got my bachelor's degree. Then I went abroad. I lived in San Francisco for a year. Saw the startup culture there. I was very inspired by that. I came back to Sweden. I got a master's in entrepreneurship and business design, going in the product side of things. I had a product company for 3 years in Sweden. So I built with a small team. So I had very much that background and that mindset. And I felt like when I came into this company, it would be very important for me to transfer that mindset onto most of our developers. And we did educations on all the basics, like the lean startup methodology, design thinking, and all these things. And it would be literally me holding lectures for our whole group of people inside the company. And what I saw there was that most people, quite honestly, it was like, okay, but I don't care too much. And now we can ask ourselves, why don't they care? Is it because even though when I educate them in the project that they're working on, maybe they don't have that opportunity to implement that? That's also perhaps the case, because you might have a product manager on the side of the client that's like very dominant, and they're just going to tell you the way that it's going to be. So it depends on the culture of the team that you're working in. That might be a part of it. But then there's also a part of people that are like, I don't care about that. Like, I only want to do DevOps. I don't want to think about the bigger picture. I only want to do backend development and so on. But what I saw was that there's maybe 10 to 20% of the people that are more broad-minded, interested, more entrepreneurial in nature. And eventually, when I saw who those people were, I started doubling down on teaching them and then trying to distribute them across the company to the different projects, so that at least every project has one of those people that are like questioning things, educating themselves in things that are not purely tech oriented. So that's what I've been doing on the product side, and that's what I found there. As far as AI, I think it was just the communication early on Slack that, like, this is coming in. We're not a big corporation, so we didn't do limitations in the sense that, you can't send your code to, like, to
GitHub or whatever,
GPT or
Copilot
GitHub or
or
whatever,
Yeah.
whatever's gonna to make it like risky. So we were like, start using it, see what comes up. We bought everybody like licenses for Copilots and Cursor and so on, just to encourage it, to say that we are open to all of these things. And then I think it is going to be, to some extent, on the individual level, that they're going to be interested. And if you have 10 people that are using it in the company and they really find it useful, hopefully that cross-pollinates within your company. They're like, hey, why are you still doing things like this? Do you know that you can do it much faster with that? And I think, like, even a lot of the people that were like my wife, for example, she was very even like anti-chat GPT early on. It was frightening. What do you mean it can answer anything and so on? But after a while in her work, which is like in legal stuff, when she saw the benefits, at some point it becomes undeniable, right? That it's so valuable that, why would I be working without it? But you have to see that it is that.
Change is scary for everyone,
Yeah.
right? Change is scary. And I think, for example, I was working with one of our front end developers recently on one of our startup things. And this lady has like many years of experience doing front end stuff, and she had still never done anything with AI.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling if she went and used something like Lovable, Cursor, Replit, all these things, she may look at it and be like, do I even have a job anymore?
Yeah.
Like, I copied and pasted some Figma design or screenshot in here, and it gave me like fully working React code at the end of this. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think for some of these people, it's a scary proposition, at least initially. Like, their initial reaction is like,
Very much
crap,
so.
what does this mean?
Yeah.
And the reality is there's still a lot of work to do. She still has work to do. But I think for a lot of people, it's just as scary at the face when you read the headlines and you read the hype in the media. I think it's just scary to people too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's just a matter, I think, for you and I, because we're in business so many years, and we know that business is constantly changing. So we've grown to adapt to the idea of always, thinking about where's the ball going to be in 2 or 3 years down the line. And we also know that if you don't adapt with the times, time will run over you, right? So for us, it's a natural,
Yeah.
well, things are changing now, we're just going to have to move with it. But for a lot of people, it hasn't been like that. And it hasn't been probably a time in history when so many jobs in different sectors were at risk because of this AI thing. So I think it's natural that it is that. And I think also, a lot these big AI companies talking about, how AGI is around the corner and all these things. I mean, it gives value to their stock prices, which is what they're interested in. So a lot of that fear mongering comes from the companies itself, right? Right. Like when the NVIDIA CEO says, like, we're not going to need programmers in the future and so on. So these things are like very scary when they say it. And, but also there's always some sort of like power behind it, that there's a reason that they say the very specific things that they want to say and so on. So, but I
Well,
think, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's one universal truth here. Generally speaking, the people that have a product idea, business people, those kind of stakeholders are never going to build software.
Mm.
I can't even get my salespeople to log into a CRM system and log anything, let alone thinking that they would go to Lovable and build a CRM in a weekend.
Yeah, I
It's
got
not going to happen.
you. Yeah.
These are just different people. That
Yeah.
like they don't think this way. They don't build software, logical processes and workflows and all. They don't do it. If they did, like Microsoft Access would have ended all of SaaS software like 25 years ago, probably,
Good point as
right?
well. That's a good point as well. Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean some of them can't do this. Some of them can. I'm not saying they can't, but the vast majority of them, I don't think so. They're salespeople. They just want to go do their job. They're not going to stop selling stuff to be like, I'm going to go build LinkBound over the weekend. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, it's not
No.
going to happen. It's different. It's a different personality. But I do believe, well, and what somebody said, like, which was great on social media one day. They were talking about that exact topic and how, oh, when no code came out or low code came out, it scares everybody and thinks everybody's going to lose their job. And it's like ultimately it just created experts at no code and experts at low code,
Yeah.
because the business units still don't create those. Just like Salesforce,
Yeah.
business people don't go customize Salesforce. They hire experts that do that. Like you're
Really
still
valid.
hiring a different form of engineer to come in and do this. And
Yeah.
I think AI is very much the same way. You're still going to have the business side that does whatever they do, and you're still going to have some kind of experts, be it product engineering, whatever we call these things as we continue to go forward, that are the experts of like, okay, how do I glue all this stuff together, the data, build something, understand the workflow and the process and all of this. It's like building with the Legos, but the Legos just kind of keep changing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think every generation that comes along thinks that the new abstraction layer that is the new thing is ruining it for the new generation. So like if you have people that at some point, learned assembler when C came around, they were probably complaining at C, oh, do they even know what all of these commands are? How did they run and
Yeah.
so on? And then all of a sudden there's a new layer, there's C++. And then all of a sudden I come to college, it's Java who has a garbage collection. Do they even know what these pointers do? How do they handle their memory? They have no idea what's happening in the background. AI is just that one next layer of abstraction that's just coming on top of all of these things. And sure, as the generations move on, people work on that like abstraction layer and a little bit downwards. So I never went, all the way down to assembler. I guess I could have, but my work didn't take me there. And it's just the nature of things. It tends to go in the abstraction
Yeah.
direction because it's rapid application development, basically. So like you're trying to get quicker to results, and people become expert in these different segments. And the irony is that there is a market on both ends. So you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna find the new experts that are experts in like Lovable consulting, whatever the heck that's gonna
Yeah.
be, right? But you're also still gonna have assembler consultants that are amazingly paid because there's like 12 of them left in the world
Yeah.
or something like that. So there's still these systems that are alive.
And there are still COBOL developers.
Exactly, and they're killing it in banks.
They're probably the ones that that's probably where we need AI the most, because there are the COBOL developers are all
That's a good point.
retiring.
That's a good
We
point.
need AI for COBOL. That's what we
Yeah.
really need.
You got it.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation today. Lastly, I think we should talk for a minute about owning a dev agency and also kind of building a SaaS company. And, I'm a product guy at heart. I've started 3 other SaaS companies in the past. And so I love building products. Like I'm very much a product guy. But in the face of AI and the unknown and all this stuff, I think it's also great for us to just diversify, right? And we have probably like you, I have extra talent, I have extra resources, I have access to great talent. How do we kind of diversify and build some other products and do some other things? Is that how you see it? Is this a diversification strategy for you, or is it you guys are kind of building your own internal tool? You're like, hey, maybe somebody else could use this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my end, it was probably the first part of how you were talking about it. So it's just always been the passion, quite honestly. I always wanted to build products. This business kind of came up as an opportunity, and I think it has been a fun and great journey. But I've also felt like, I have a hang of how this consulting things work, but I'm really passionate about building products. And we were that from day one. So from day one, we started, using people that were on the bench and investing into some of the things that we wanted to build ourselves. Now, what we learned throughout the years is that there's a proper way to do this and a wrong way to do this, so to say. And I think one of the most natural things that happens for consulting companies or agencies is that you're thinking, well, I have this bench of people. Maybe there's 5 people, maybe there's 10, 20 people, where this is a waste, right? And you're trying to figure out, we call it bench management. What are you going to do with these people so that they're not just sitting around? Like, are they going to learn new things, learn new skills?
Yeah.
what are we going to do with them? And for us, we were like, oh, well, let's use them for building new products, which internally can bring more value and so on. Now, the problem was that we didn't then lock them down. Like the way that we would do it, like while they're on the bench, they're going to be working on these things. And then what ends up happening is that you have this idea for this thing you want to build, and you have these engineers that work for 6 weeks on it, and now all of a sudden they get sold to a project, take them off, see if we can have a new bench that comes on it.
Yep.
Oh my God, and we just realized this is never going to happen. Nobody's happy. The developers are not
Wait,
happy.
I thought AI was going to solve all these problems.
Yeah, right. It should be building all of this for us, but unfortunately not. And nobody's happy because like there's no missionaries on that project because it's nobody's project. You're just there temporarily. The developers see it as kind of like the place you go when there's nothing serious for you to do as far as like a real client. So they're like, oh yeah, the punishment, the in-house project and so on. And then there's also like nobody constantly pushing that forward with the vision, with the sales and so on.
Yeah.
So what we learned throughout the years is like, if we are going to double down on some of these, all right, we're going to have to create these dedicated teams, and they don't have to be big. Maybe it's 2 or 3 people, and they're always left on that project. Now, if we do have a bench, these people can pull from that bench and say, hey, I need, help from 2 front-end developers right now because we can use them for 2 months to build this for us. Otherwise, we're going to use time. But when they're done, these people always stay, and the other ones are always for sale, so to say, right? So you have to kind of like be very disciplined in saying there is an opportunity cost. Somebody has just told me that they're going to be paying me this amount every month for this engineer, but I'm going to say no for the potential of this product down the line being more, paying more dividend, right? And that's the trade-off, so to say. And the question is also, in that product space, who is going to be the entrepreneur that moves this forward? Is it going to be somebody external that comes with the idea and then they're the ones pushing it? Are you going to try to hire for that position? Or are you as the co-founder eventually going to, move into that position and then replace yourself from the agency? So all of these are things that we've been thinking about.
I cloned myself.
Yeah, how did you do that with AI?
I have 5 children.
Okay, gotcha. You're making plans for them ahead of time. Gotcha. But so yeah, I mean, these are all of the discussions that I think, because I think it's one of those things. Every consultancy or agency at some point has gone through this. They're like, oh man, we have this bench, we have to make the most out of it. Let's build something, see what we can do out of it. But it's like, if you don't give it your everything, it's not going to work out, because out there is somebody that is giving it 110%, having it their only focus.
Yeah.
And you're competing with that, basically. So
Yep.
We have, to be fair, also like not been able to be disciplined enough to say that let's stick to 1 product or 2 products. We have throughout the years tried 5 products. 3 are going really well. 1 is struggling a little bit, but still up and running. 1 is, gone down the drain entirely. And it takes a lot of time. I think people have to realize that, this is a new journey that's going to take 4 or 5 years to get to the point where we want it to be. And eventually, probably when it gets to that level, you might want to separate it from the actual agency so that it becomes its own entity, so that it has its own P&L and all these different things. Because a lot of times you run them internally in your agency, and they just become this whole of like cost, which nobody is quite sure how costly is it and so on, but it's okay because they're the internal project and so on. But I think the sooner you're able to divide it so that it becomes its own company, the sooner it becomes real, because then all right, well, we have the other 200,000 in the bank. What are we going to do with this? Let's see, right?
We have the exact same stuff right now, and I actually went and hired a CTO and a head of product just for the ventures. And then we have a few developers working on it. And I hired an old friend of mine, not because he's old, because I've known him for a long time, here in Kansas City, a good friend, to help me run this thing. So we invested a lot into it, and excited to see what comes with Full Scale Ventures. So I'll keep you guys updated on the podcast as we launch new things.
Can I ask you, how do you go about with your different? I think you talked earlier about having multiple products running in parallel. Who is the actual, so you mentioned a CTO right now, so I think that's very important, but who acts as the CEO in these different products? Who's the one actually pushing forward the vision, the sales?
Well, we're still early stage in all of them, but between me and Craig, we'll be doing that part of it, yeah.
Gotcha.
But we're still figuring it out, so we're hoping to launch the first product Actually, the first product probably launch before this airs, but
Okay.
we'll see.
I'm looking forward to that. See what you guys are building. And I think it's also fair to stick to a domain that most of the people in your company understand. So if you do something like, if you have no financial experience and you decide because you have a little bit of fintech experience, that the whole company is going to revolve around that, I think that's tough. I think it's good to stick to things that most of the people in the company understand. So that's one of my experiences as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Senad, thank you so much for being on the show today. Again, this was Senad Santic. You can check out his company Zendev and LinkBound if you're doing social selling. Senad, anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up the show here?
No, nothing special. I just think we were talking about it earlier. I see you're doing something in the direction of taking your agency and then building products out of it. It's kind of a way to bootstrap it and not have to be dependent on investments, which I think is a great luxury. So it's basically what somebody would do as an individual, try to do it on the side of their work. We're kind of doing the same thing. This is on the side of our work, and we're hoping that it's going to grow to the level that it also can be a serious business for us as well. So I think it's very interesting to follow people that have a similar journey and see how this works out and learn from each other in this process. So thank you so much for the opportunity for this conversation. I learned a lot from you as well here. So let's stay in touch.
Yeah, and by the way, that's how we think about it. How do we build startups differently where we don't have to raise capital and we're building the whole thing with offshore resources at a much lower cost. So, I mean, it gives us much more runway and time to figure out how to make things work. And so we're excited. We're early stage of this, but we're excited. We're having fun with it so far. So
awesome, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Before we wrap up today's episode, we have a special resource for you if you're looking to elevate your development team to have more of a product-driven mindset. I have a fantastic free ebook about turning your code-first team into a product-first team. Please go to fullscaleteam.com/product-first-teams to download this free ebook. There's also a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Product Driven, and we'll see you in the next episode.